PERI Bleumer.
Hello, K Rock.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We were just talking in the green room about our love of radio. I grew up listening to WXRK K Rock in New Rochelle, New York.
And I grew up listening to WGRD in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Holland, Michigan, where I'm from. But I've always had the radio on, and I fell asleep with it every night.
There was a time in our lives, we're about the same age,
yes,
where the radio was so important to us. When I was a kid, like you, I would fall asleep to the radio. I remember it was AM in the early days when I was really little, and then FM came on board. And then I was like, just like the car, the house, if you're doing chores around the house, like painting outdoors, or then I became a lifeguard when I got older, there was always
the radio.
I mean, what was your favorite type of music back then?
Well, I couldn't wait to get a room of my own. I shared with my sister. And the reason I wanted a room of my own was so I could have the radio on. And I remember listening to everything like early Elton John, the Bay City Rollers, Captain and Tennille. And that's back when they had all those crazy songs like Convoy. And remember all those Run,
we
Joey,
got
Run?
A mighty convoy.
That's right.
So, you know what? There was pop rock. It was like Captain Tennille is a great example. They were like very poppy, but they were classified as rock back then.
Right. Well, and then you'd have Bad Blood, with Elton John. It was poppy, but it kind of led you into some of the classics. And from there, I got just more and more into, I remember when the first time I heard Van Halen. And, I'm just laying in bed singing Jamie's Crying at the top of my lungs.
What grade were you in at that point?
God, I think I was in 7th grade.
Now, did you go to a Catholic school, like an all-girls school, or was it co-ed?
I didn't. I went to co-ed school.
Okay, so were girls rockers back then? Did you have a crew of girlfriends that were into the rock and roll?
No, our crew of girlfriends, I was a little different, but what we would do is we would leave church services early and run downstairs in the basement of the church and turn on the radio to listen to Casey Kasem. So we liked everything that was in the top 40. I mean, Pat Benatar, going all the way from the 70s into 80s, we would run downstairs and listen to music. So that was my gaggle of girlfriends, but I liked everything. I'm very eclectic. Everything from Madonna to opera, I'll listen to it. I love music.
So it's funny because my school was an all-boys Catholic high school called Iona Prep in New Rochelle. And I was there, 79 to 83. And there were different cliques of guys. There were the rockers, who were into the rock and roll. And then there were the disco guys that were only interested in dance music.
Oh, there you go.
And they would wear their Capriccio shoes.
Yes.
And they actually knew how to dance. So the girls would love them because they could dance with girls. Because us rocker guys, we were like big jocks that didn't know how to dance.
And we called them the freaks. They were the ones that smoked. And one of them came to my birthday party and brought me my first album that I had myself. And it was Double Vision by Foreigner.
Well, that's a good one.
So they were the freaks, but I liked them too. I sort of got along with everyone.
Well, it's funny because that time period I'm talking about, there were a lot of different types of music. So for an example, New Wave started.
Yes.
So New Wave was considered the Clash, Elvis Costello.
Well, and the Police.
Blondie fell into that.
The Police first came
started
out
as that.
Absolutely.
Because it was they had their own radio station in New York. It was WLIR, and it was that kind of music. And then in school, as I mentioned earlier, there was a clique of guys that were the New Wave guys.
Right. And they would wear all of the ecstasy and all the different pearl buttons all over their jacket. And to me, it was always funny. Growing up in Holland, Michigan, we're a beat behind you by 5 years from New York City. So everything that hit on television didn't hit us until 5 years later because we're out in the middle of nowhere. But we definitely had that clique as well.
Well, what was the closest city that you were to, a big city?
Well, Grand Rapids is probably the closest
city. So they would have big bands would come through there, big rock acts?
Yeah, they would. Van Andel Arena, yeah.
Because I remember Motley Crue, I think, shot a video from Grand Rapids, and it was one of their greatest video shoots. And I think I still have it. It might have been the Carnival of Sins or something like that, where Grand Rapid fans are known to be rock and rollers. That's a fact.
Absolutely. The Verve started there, and I remember seeing Stained there in a little tiny bar in Grand Rapids, and I saw Seven Mary 3, little tiny bar in Whitehall, Michigan. They would come to Detroit, but they all had friends on our side of the state, so they would come over and play in little venues.
How far is Detroit to Grand Rapids?
Gosh, I'm horrible at this, but I'm going to guess it's like 4 hours. I mean, it's
Okay,
completely
so it's
the
more
other
of a
side.
flight than it would be a drive.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Detroit is a music city, obviously. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think what happened was it spilled out, right? So I think that like a lot of the bands, like I mentioned, Motley Crue, Metallica, some of the harder guys,
Yeah.
they love to play the Grand Rapids area because it sells out all the time. All the kids go hog shit.
They do. Well, and it's interesting. It's a little bit of Bible Belt right in the middle of Michigan, but those kids were craving something new and different. You know,
Maybe that's why.
That's exactly why. My first concert, I saw Moody Blues, and they were playing with Blue Oyster Cult, and
That's a strange mix-up.
Isn't that strange?
Because Blue Oyster Cult is a great band, and I actually opened up for them.
Oh, did you?
Jacked Up opened up for Blue Oyster Cult recently.
Oh, I love that.
I'll
Here
tell you,
in Florida?
I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Do it.
We get a call from Lucy Nicandri, who runs the Suncoast Charities for Children, and Lucy is the proof of angels on earth. Like she's doing God's work as a human being, raising money for children's charities. And over the years, she's raised millions. So she puts on this thing called Thunder by the Bay, which started out her with a cocktail napkin telling some of her friends that she wants to put on a motorcycle event. Many, many years later, it becomes one of the biggest events, not just in Sarasota County, but probably like one of the biggest events in the state.
That's right. I'm very familiar with it.
So we finally get the call, Jacked Up, you're going to perform live. We're like, yes, right? Because we've been trying to get in there for years. So I thought she was just going to give me like Saturday at noon or Sunday at noon.
Right.
Just no, we're opening up for the headliner on Friday night, Blue Oyster Cult, which happens to be one of my favorite bands growing up.
Oh, my Lord.
So now I'm freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to practice. We got to be so ready for this. So sure enough, everything worked out perfectly. We got a chance to go backstage because we were VIP too, because they gave us the same badges. So like we were in a compound. So we got to mingle with the band. So we met with them and their wives, and I had a chance to get photographs with Eric and Buck.
Your inner child must have just been exploding.
And then Eric Bloom actually put his arm around me and congratulated me. He goes, "You guys are a really good cover band." Like
I love that.
We did a great set. And then we were talking about how he's 80 now, and like he does this to stay young.
Right.
And if he didn't do it, he'd be sitting in some retirement home bored. So he likes to go out and play. And Buck starts telling us about all the guitars he collected over the years. And these guys are older guys now. But sure enough, they put on a 90-minute set of all your favorite Blue Oyster Cult songs. And they sounded just like they did
that's
when
rare.
you and I were kids in the late 70s listening to them.
That's amazing, and that's rare. Oftentimes you go to a band and you're trying to relive your dream, and it's just not there anymore.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to talk about that. Vince Neil, who I love, and I've met him twice now in real life. The guy needs to hang it up, man. It's embarrassing watching it because I'm rooting for him.
Right.
And I went to his final show, the one that they signed in blood, which was bullshit because they ended up playing after that. And he just got worse and worse and worse. So what are your thoughts?
Axl Rose, another one.
What are your thoughts on that? Like you pay good money for a ticket. And if you're like me, you want to be up close. So I'm paying like 3-4 times what everybody else is paying just so I can get closer. And then I'm disappointed.
Well, we've reached the age where we want to be able to spend that kind of money, and we think the seats are worth it. I think you have to sort of know what you're going in for. I certainly don't sound the same way I did when I was 22. So I know it's going to be different, but it is disappointing. And I think you have to be realistic and go in with the vibe. My favorite band in the world, and I'm going to catch a lot of flack for it, is Night Ranger. The guitar licks, the music, all the different phases they've gone through, all their different albums, and I've seen them 23 times. And the last 2 times last year, they were not the band that I first saw in 1983 in Akron, Ohio,
But were they close enough, though? That's the thing.
They're close enough, but you get in with the vibe. You sing with them.
Yeah,
it becomes a party.
Of course.
And if Vince embraces it and lets you sing with him and owns it, then great. But I do think that there comes a time, there's a great poem called To an Athlete Dying Young that's about knowing when it's time to hang it up.
Interesting.
And it might be time to hang it up for Axl and Vince, for sure.
Well, so then I'll ask you this question then. What do you think of the Stones then?
That's interesting. That's like seeing an icon, right? So again, do you go for the experience? Do you expect them to be the same? Now, I've heard that he sounds really good. It's not going to be the same group of high notes. How great are the backup singers? What's going to happen there? But I'd go, and I'd pay the money. It's an icon. It's a privilege.
I put the Stones in their own category. The Stones, in my opinion, can do whatever they want. They could be 90 years old and still play.
There you go.
Because they're the greatest rock and roll band on the history of the planet. I would say number 2 would be AC/DC. These are bands that are alive and still going.
Right, they are still going. Did you just recently go see them?
Yes, so I saw AC/DC. A friend of mine took me for my birthday.
Good.
And we had really, really good seats. And I went in there with like mixed expectations. Like I'm like, all right, whatever. I was blown away how good they were.
That's
The
awesome.
sound was amazing. You know, it's not easy to do sound at a stadium, like a football stadium, but they had it down perfectly. Brian Johnston, who lives around here, who's I believe is 77, he sounded great. You know, the problem was never with his voice. The problem that he had some hearing issues, which they fixed.
Right.
So he's doing his thing. Angus, who's 70, still has the motor where he's running around in the little schoolboy outfit. You know, he did everything, man. And it was one of the best shows I've seen in a while. And I thanked my friend a million times. I'm like, you took me to one of the greatest shows. I had no idea it was going to be so good.
You know, I remember going to see the last Eagles concert before all the, passing away. I remember looking at my husband and saying, whoever their vocal coach is deserves a medal, because whatever they're doing, they did. They sounded exactly like an album that I'd put on in my basement in Holland, Michigan in the 70s. They sounded amazing. I saw them in Tampa.
Was this at the Emily Arena?
The Hell Freezes Over tour.
What year was that?
20 years ago? It has to be like 2014.
I saw them there a few years ago.
Yeah.
They came back a few years ago. And the Hotel California must be celebrating an anniversary. So they played that album from start to finish.
Oh, I love when
Then they
do
took
that.
a break, and then they came back and did like their greatest hits. And me and Larry, my guitar player, who's a huge concert-going guy, we looked at each other. We were with like a dozen other people, and we couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah, it's
We're like,
amazing.
are we actually hearing this? They sounded so freaking good. And to your point, their vocals were crystal clear.
Absolutely.
On spot. Vince Gill was in that project. Because when Glenn Fry passed away,
right.
They needed to bring in another singer and another guitar player to fill his shoes.
Right. Well, and Vince Gill has an interesting voice. I would have liked to have heard that, but being able to hear Glenn Fry before he passed, and it was incredible. I remember just sitting there. I also, 40 years ago probably, I saw Paul McCartney solo tour. And I remember just sitting there and thinking of listening to She's Leaving Home on the Sgt. Pepper's album. Again, laying on my stomach on the shag carpeting with the record up in
One of the
front
greatest
you,
albums ever made.
singing along, and probably the least known song on that album.
It
and
is.
he came out and he said, we never really do this, but we're going to do it. And I just got goosebumps, and that's what music means. You know, if the songwriters and the singers aren't as strong as they were at one point, but do you still feel it? And that's the thing. If you still feel it, keep going to see Vince.
Well, you know what?
If you don't.
So you and I are rockers, right? And we have the same classic rock loves. But here, I'm going to bring up Taylor Swift for a second, because I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. I don't necessarily know her music. I don't have any of her records. I might be able to hear something like that one that I might know it's hers. But nonetheless, I do respect her for selling out, arenas and stadiums, really stadiums, all over the country. I think all over the world. I mean, so she is bringing live music out there, and she's, I don't know what the prices are, but she's thoroughly entertaining people. I believe it's mostly women, right? A lot of teenage girls go gaga over her.
And the library, though, you have to respect. It's like a poet. She writes and writes and writes and writes and writes and writes. And the songs are interesting. Like I said, I like a little bit of everything. Rock is my fave, but I haven't gone to see Taylor Swift. I probably know 3 songs, but the 3 songs I've heard, it's like listening to poetry. So I do respect her body of work.
Yeah, and she has slow songs, and I went to the Grammys 2 years in a row. I was a guest of a high-level CBS executive, who's still a good friend of mine. And so I went 2 years in a row, and I got to see Taylor Swift perform both years.
Okay.
And, when you see her perform live, it's interesting. You also, when you see her in the seats, because what's happening is when you're in the arena, and the commercials are on, because this is a live show.
Right.
There's a delay, but it's live. So the house lights come up, and people are walking around, and they're talking, and people at home don't know this, right? And then the guy comes on, you go, in 10 seconds, please return to your seats. And they count down, so everybody's running to get back to their seats.
Right.
So the lights come back down, and then they're back. But she was the belle of the ball, because when the lights came up, all she would do was I felt like I was looking at somebody at high school prom, because she would run around and talk to everybody, man, and hug and kiss everybody. She had so many friends there, and she was so popular. But you know who stole the show?
Who's that?
They actually, they came in, they made their own special entrance right before the show started. It was Beyonce and her husband.
Yeah, yeah.
And they came in, and everybody was like, oh.
They're here.
They're the biggest couple in Hollywood.
Jay-Z, right.
Jay-Z and her in music. They came in, they strategically came in at the very end. They were escorted, they sat up right up front, and then the show started.
You know what I'll tell you, though? What I love about Taylor is when you're watching those shows, and I like to watch them to see other categories that I may not be as familiar with, right? But she stands and enjoys the music and the performances.
You're right. She's a fan.
She's a fan,
Right.
and that's cool. You know, I can't tell you how many concerts I've gone to, and I turned 60 this year, you know, so I'm not embarrassed to say it, but where people say, sit down. And somewhere in me, that 18 to 21-year-old is still saying, you know what, screw you. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to feel it. That's what music's about. You know, even at the end of James Taylor, I stood up for the last 3 songs.
You know what? I have no problem when people stand up because I'll stand up sometimes too. But being that I'm 60 also, and you know, I have some knee issues from years of football. I'm like pretty much sitting down more than I'm standing.
Well,
you
I
know?
didn't say it doesn't hurt the next day. Let's be honest.
But I'll never quit.
Day.
I'll let them stand, and I'll, you know, that's fine. I'm not like one of those idiots, you know. But at the same time, they should be respectful to know that, okay, at some point you should sit down.
Yeah.
Just in case because there was one time a guy that was in a wheelchair next to me, and he clearly was disabled, and the poor guy couldn't like really see anything the whole time because these girls were like weren't cognizant of the fact that this guy was trying to see the show.
I'm not going to wear a huge hat. I'm not going to stand up in front of a disabled person. That's not going to happen. But it's just the experience. It's the way you know. You know, I often listen to Howard Stern, and he always says, "Oh, I don't want to go to a concert that people just go so they can sing to impress their neighbor next to them. Look, I know all the words." And I can't help but sing. It just comes out. It's an experience.
Of course,
it's like a movement. Absolutely.
No, listen. You know what? That's all about rock and roll, man. Like, you know what? You feel the energy. You get up and you enjoy it. Another show I just saw where everybody stood the entire time, even if you had good seats, you stood. Was Metallica. They came to Raymond James a few weeks after AC/DC.
They did.
Did you see that show?
I couldn't see it. I was out of town at a funeral, but I was lamenting it.
So let me tell you my quick story. So I grew up knowing a little bit about Metallica, but not being a big fan of Metallica. I was listening to more blues, more Stones, more Almonds, and that just wasn't my cup of tea at the time. But I knew people that were totally Metallica freaks, right?
Right.
So I always had a respect for Metallica, but I never like really knew their catalog. So even when I got older, you know, and I'm playing in a band, you know, my band we don't cover that stuff. But then I went to see Metallica for another birthday present. Go with my buddy Scott.
I need to get some of your friends.
My friends are all rockers because they hang out with the K Rock.
That's right.
But Metallica blew me away. I became a huge fan. I went home and I downloaded everything, and I spent days listening to their catalogs. And I'm just like, James Hetfield, I'm going to shave my beard just so it looks like his. I'm going to like do that handlebar thing because he is so cool. He is so good. Metallica had this round stage where they had the mosh pit, and then they had these big towers which were all doubled as screens. And the place, I never saw 50,000 people at Raymond James, like singing in unison, clapping in unison, like everybody was loving it.
Well, you know what's funny too? That's their language. I don't know why, but Lars ends up going on a lot of different podcasts and a lot of talk shows, and he can barely string a sentence together. It takes 48 minutes to tell the story. It ends up being a good story because of his experiences, but once he's on drums, you know what I mean? That's his language. It's sort of like you're finding your love language. That's where he shines.
Oh, he's great.
And
great.
I was lamenting that I didn't get to go to
So
that
at the
one.
Grammys, because I was with that CBS guy, we had really, really good seats, and we were right next to all the stars. So I got to see Ringo Starr, and I got to see Lars, and they're both little guys.
Yeah.
They're like really little
Yeah, they
guys.
are.
I mean, they're like 125 pounds wet.
Yeah, it's like Tommy Shaw. I think he's 25 pounds soaking wet.
Unbelievable. And Ozzy, which we'll talk about in a second because he just did a final show, he was there, and he was walking, you know how he walks like this? He shuffles. They had two people around him, and they had to bring him up to the audience to the podium, right? So they made sure that he got up during the commercial breaks. So when we came back live, he was already up there because it takes forever to get him there. And then you don't see this at home, but there's this huge glass thing where they can read like a prompter. So the audience at home doesn't see that.
Right.
But when you're in the arena, you can see there's a prompter there. So he's reading the prompter, and you don't know if is he like on drugs? Is he drunk, or is he just brain just like gone?
Right.
Because he was just a mess. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But and then I got to see Paul McCartney. You know, I got to see a lot of stars, man. And at one point, I saw Paul McCartney pretty close, and then he got up and played with one of my favorite guys, Dave Grohl.
Oh, yes.
Do you know the Foo Fighters?
I do. I love the Foo Fighters.
That band is
yes.
Every song that guy writes has got hooks in it.
Well,
He's just amazing songwriter.
I think what happened to me is you see those crazy videos they used to do, and then you listen to the music second, right? And so I remember listening to Learning to Fly without watching the video, and I'm like, this is an incredible song. Yes, the video of them dressing up as women stewardesses, that was sort of funny, but this song is amazing, and that's when I started loving them.
You know what? You just made a really good point. What was music like before MTV? Because
Exactly.
we had to imagine what it was. Now the MTV kind of showed us what the song means because they did a video to the song.
Right.
But like I was around well before MTV, and then I was also there during MTV. So,
it made some careers and it killed others.
Totally.
Christopher Cross, gone. nobody wanted to really watch his
But like
body type.
David Lee Roth was at the right place at the right time. Madonna. Remember Pat Benatar? Every song was a video.
Absolutely.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
I mean, he was spending millions. They spent millions on his videos. Like they brought in major directors to do like Thriller.
Yeah. We skipped school and we all stayed home that day and we watched it all day. And then they played it at 10 o'clock at night or something. It was an event.
And then overnight they would just put a loop on, so like you would come home a little drunk from the bars, and I would sit there mesmerized.
I was in high school.
I would sit there mesmerized. I was in high school too. I would sit there mesmerized by these videos. But then the best thing happened. You know what happened? It was bad that they got out of videos, but as they were getting out, they brought on VH1. And VH1 to me was cool because VH1 was more of an adult. It was more like more sophisticated, more like classic rock. That's now classic rock, right?
Well, I think VH1 was also a little more pedestrian. What I loved about MTV in the beginning was that I learned who Squeeze was and Ultravox and these interesting bands.
Boingo.
Well, he's interesting. You give him that. You learned about bands that maybe were really big somewhere else or were on the fringe, and that's what I think a lot of that fueled that movement we were talking about, where people were suddenly really into the new age and the new wave music.
And at the same time that we're talking about, there was no computer download. So you were glued to MTV to watch your favorite videos, whereas today now you can just simply download it.
That's right.
Or you can see it on your phone. Like we didn't have cell phones back then.
That's right. So you had to watch through 12 videos you might not have ever seen to wait for the one you wanted to see, but you learned something.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was for our age group at that time, it was highly entertaining.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you had no problem staying home on a Friday night because you knew that you were just going to watch MTV.
Oh, that was what you did. You ordered a pizza, and your boyfriend came over, and you watched TV, and you made out during the commercials.
There you go.
And then initially there weren't any commercials, but so it was a little harder to make out. It got better after a year.
I'm sure you found a way.
Always.
You figured it out.
Always.
So, what was interesting is MTV decided to go in a different direction, and they started doing the reality shows. I think Ozzy was one of the first ones that had a reality show.
Yeah, Ozzy was one of the first, and then they had the original Road Rules and the oh gosh, what's the one with the 8 people who live the real world? Yeah, they did the first. But yeah, I think Ozzy was the absolute first.
I think they saw that there was a lot of money to be made in that kind of stuff because the syndication rights and the distribution rights. So they totally went in that direction and just got out of the videos.
Yeah, it really is just another it's another network now. And VH1 did the same thing. They went off with the comedians and stand up and things like that. But it is kind of fun when you go back and you're flicking channels and you see some of the old videos coming back.
There is a cable channel. I forgot what it's called, man. I should know this. Where you could still see nothing but around the clock videos.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I got to figure out the name of it. Tubi maybe or something like that?
Oh, Tubi. I think Tubi is just movies.
Yeah,
and
maybe it's
that
not
kind of
Tubi.
stuff.
It's something like Tubi where you have to download it.
The good news is we can look it up.
Yeah, you have to download it. So you have to download it on your television. And then you have to sign into it.
Oh, there you go.
And then,
so it's
then
like
you have
streaming.
You can stream it, and it's like they even have like 70s, 80s, 90s.
Well, it's funny how nowadays I'll be in the car and, I'll be singing with my nieces and nephews who just turned, into their late 20s. And they're like, how do you know all these songs? And I said, we grew up differently. We grew up memorizing the whole songs on an album.
You're right.
Reading the back of the album cover. Then we grew up on MTV where we listened to the same, really, 22 songs 340 times that weekend. We knew it. And I can turn on the radio, the 70s station on Sirius, and I know every single song. And my nephews are like, how do you know that? I'm like, it just was ingrained in us.
It's funny because when I was sitting in like 7th grade, science class, not paying attention to the teacher, but I would memorize Hotel California's lyrics.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I remember writing lyrics down. I had an assistant once who I really loved, and she grew up out of the country, plus she was 20 years younger than I was. And I remember saying to her one day, "Oh, Mickey, you're so fine." And she had no idea what I was talking about, and I said, "YouTube." YouTube became the best thing to be able to go back and explain to people what the videos were like from when we were kids. And I remember her face. She's looking at this chick jumping around and a bunch of cheerleaders from New Jersey. And she's like, "You listen to this?" I'm like, "Well, it was a different time."
Well, you know what's funny? There were people sitting in your chair, people that I interviewed that were younger than us, and they got their music. So when they were in the car and they were children, their parents were playing the Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Because the parents were playing the stuff that they were listening to, and they were forcing their kids to listen to it. So now these kids grew up listening to classic rock. So they knew classic rock.
Right.
It wasn't like the 80s weren't strange to them. Like they knew the 80s because their parents forced it on them.
But you think about that. I bet you can name some songs. I mean, I right now on my Apple Music, I have Melanie, I have Buffy St. Marie, I've got the old 8 tracks that my parents made me listen to. I bet you've got some too.
My father had an 8-track player for sure, and he was like really into like all that basic stuff, like Burt Bacharach.
Oh, there you go.
B.J. Thomas.
Yes.
And Carole King.
Yeah, little
that was
Dionne Warwick.
Yeah, that was the big stuff in like the late 60s.
So don't you get a little bit reminiscent when you hear that?
Yeah.
I remember, I found Melanie. I got a brand new key, and I was like, you know what? That took me right back to my childhood.
Remember that song, Downtown?
Oh yeah.
Downtown.
Who was that? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well, there was Dionne Warwick. There was B.J. Thomas. I mentioned Raindrops Keep Falling on
my. Barbara Streisand.
It was easy listening, man.
Yes, it was.
Like with a capital E.
Yeah.
And
my Neil Diamond.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
Neil Sedaka, Neil Diamond. Who was the guy that wrote Behind the Monkees that wrote all that music for the Monkees? That famous composer.
Behind the Monkees. I don't know.
Yeah, the Monkees were a fictitious band.
Well, I remember the Monkees, but I don't know who was the guy behind it.
Gosh, and then anyway, Neil Diamond. Did we say him already?
Yep.
But the point is that
John Denver.
There was so much good, happy, fun music that when we were kids, we were in the station wagon driving down to Florida. Right. And screaming and singing and dancing along. My father's cranking up the stereo, driving down as a family. Those are some of the best times of my life, man. People ask me, how did I become K Rock? How did I become a musician? How did I get so much into this world? And it was for those early days of being the youngest in my family and listening to music. And I would memorize the lyrics, so then I would come back at the dining room table and I would entertain everybody.
Yes.
Because I was the cute little kid. So I'd be singing. I'd like little microphone with like a little thing.
Oh yeah.
And I'd be singing and telling jokes. And everybody would be clapping and encouraging me to do all. My mother was like, "Oh, Kirsty, you're so funny. Keep going."
Shows in the basement.
Yeah.
My sister and I did the same thing, and we would learn different songs and we would sing them. And my mom used to say, to keep us from fighting as girls, she'd say sing. So we would sing the whole time we were loading the dishwasher or dusting the house. When we did our chores, we would sing all the time. And we moved so much that music became just something that we could take with us all the time.
Highly entertaining.
Yeah.
So based on all of this, did you ever pick up an instrument or take lessons?
I didn't. I have pretty strong ADHD, although it was undiagnosed at the time. It was just called hyperactivity. And my focus, I sang, and I sang through choirs and show choirs, and I was in a band for a short period of time. And, I am more of a singer. My sister...
So you have a good singing voice.
Well, I don't know where it is now that I'm 60. I'm not quite as bad as Vince Neil, but I'm probably close. But that was singing was my instrument because I couldn't read music. I remember going to Ohio State and trying out for all the show choirs. And when everything I got in as an exception because I couldn't read the music. Just my ADD wouldn't let me go there. But love singing. And when I hear other singers, I'm the one that gets the goosebumps or starts sweating or, my hair stands on end. It's so powerful to me, that music. What can I say?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wish I'd been able to pick up an instrument. My mother told me once, I said, can I take piano? And she said, absolutely not. You can take a guitar, because if you have a guitar, you can go to a party and be popular. And I thought, well, 1958, thank you for calling, but that's not.
Have guitar, will travel.
Yeah, so I did not play an instrument, but my mother, my grandmother, they played piano a little bit, and they were both, my mom was an actress, so, a lot of singing there, a lot of singing in shows. So my sister and I, we know Broadway, we know opera, we know everything. It's just crazy. We love it.
So you basically have this really strong appreciation of music.
I really
and
do.
you like all genres.
Yeah, I'm a super fan.
And are you still, like, in your car, what are you still listening to? Like, what are you currently rocking out to these days?
So right now, I have been listening to this older band that I found called Carolina Liar. And they have a couple of really great songs. It's sort of a hillbilly rock song. I love them. I really, really love Amorosa, which is kind of a punky band. I mean, I'm all over the place. And then my standard is Night Ranger. When I need to just belt it out, Faces
Sister
by Night
Christian,
Ranger.
You can still rock in America.
Well, yeah, and those are probably
when you close your eyes.
The two best known songs and my two least favorite. But I mean, I just adore them. And I remember, watching, I went to see Ozzy Osbourne, Speak of the Devil, and Brad was his guitar player, and Brad then went into Night Ranger, and that's how I got into Night Ranger.
And Brad is an amazing guitar player.
Oh my God, every riff, I love it just as much as I love the song chords.
And the drummer sings too, which is great.
Oh yeah, Kelly, he's amazing. And
I saw them open up for Sammy Hagar in Clearwater at that Bay thing.
Oh yeah,
when it first opened.
We just saw Sammy Hagar, and what was so amazing is him having Michael with him from Van Halen. Oh my God.
Michael Anthony.
Yeah, it was amazing. Did you go see them just at down in Clearwater?
Yeah, I see every time Sammy Hagar comes to town, every time.
Absolutely.
I go.
And
whether it's with the Wobbleritas or he's with the Chicken Foot or he's by himself.
Yes, but when you mix that, there's something about that old Van Halen, Michael Anthony's high-pitched voice harmony, and he still has it. He was hitting all the notes, and I was like, Jiminy.
No doubt.
Jiminy Christmas, that's what I say. I was like, Jiminy Christmas, he's so good.
I still am a huge Van Halen fan, and I grew up listening to the albums as they came out.
Yes.
The first, the second, Women and Children first. It kept going up, and when David Lee Roth left, I wasn't disappointed because I kind of knew through MTV that he wanted to do Just a Gigolo and he wanted to be that guy.
Yeah.
Like, because he's got this vaudeville thing about him.
Yeah.
So he split, and everybody was like, all right, fine, we had enough of David Lee Roth. But when Sammy Hagar came in, because I was also a Sammy fan.
Well, they had that other guy for a while, right?
No, Sammy came first. So after David Lee Roth, Sammy came, right? And then they had the other guy.
Oh, the guy who sang Words, More Than Words, right?
Yeah, he came in after Sammy.
Yeah.
And then Sammy came back.
Okay, good.
But what happened was Sammy Hagar brings this wonderful solo career to Van Halen, and they come out with two monster albums back to back, 5150 and OU 812.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, they started becoming bigger. They were bigger than they were with that Roth.
And I know that you're supposed to pick one genre or the other and stick with it. I do love them both too. I'm right with you. I mean, I can listen to Dreams 647 times in a row, and I can listen to Panama 642 times.
But if I had to pick one, I'll pick Sammy, and I'll tell you why. David Lee Roth's songs were good, and they were fun, and they got me through teenage. I mean, I remember making out in cars with girls, drinking beer, listening to the Van Halen records. I mean, that was my summer. But then when Sammy came, the musician part of me came out. He started writing better songs. And then, that song Right Now got on the radio. I think I might have won a Grammy or was nominated for a Grammy or something.
Yeah, and they made it into a Pepsi Light commercial or something. Yeah.
But the quality of the musicianship just went on steroids.
It's funny that you say that. I recently went out to D.C. to watch the last tour for ELO, for Jeff Lynne, and that's what struck me is the musicianship. Every single person he had, from the women singing the opera portion of Rock Area, whatever that song is, to the cellist, to the guitar. He had the best musicians I've ever heard at a rock concert.
Jeff Lynne's known for that. Yeah, he's a serious dude.
He is, and it was amazing. And he sang everything, and he's just about to go. He's a guy I think is going to hang it up at the right time.
Yeah.
It was so powerful, and anyone out there who still gets to see them
You know who I really miss, and I only got to see him once?
Who's that?
Tom Petty.
Oh, yes.
I saw Tom Petty early in his career. He had Damn the Torpedoes, Hard Promises. I think before that there were two albums. So I think it went his first album, You're Gonna Get It was number 2. Then I think it was Damn the Torpedoes and Hard Promises. Those are the 4, I think. So he was not as big yet, but he was getting there.
Right.
Because The Waiting, I think, was the first song that got him on the FM and got him on the MTV.
Right.
And then from that point on, then MTV took off with him.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I knew him as an earlier artist. And to this day, like my band, Jacked Up, we'll cover some of their stuff. And I'll even sing one of his songs. And You Wreck Me.
What one do you sing?
You Wreck Me.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just incredible what a talent. I mean, that guy was a genius, man.
I saw him. So this was a weird bedfellow thing for me because I am not a Deadhead. I mean, I like Uncle John's band, and that's about it. But when I was in college, there was a festival, and I don't even know, somewhere in Columbus or Cleveland, but it was Bob Dylan, the Grateful Dead, and Tom Petty.
That's a great lineup.
Well, it's a great lineup for someone else. For me, it was 2 hours of get through
hippie
it.
shit for you, right?
Yeah, it was very hippy dippy, and that was seriously my Madonna stage. I was really into Prince and Madonna at that point. But to get to Tom Petty, I could not wait, and it was really incredible. It really was. I've only seen him once as well.
And another musician that I have a lot of respect for is Prince. And there's a video of Prince and Tom Petty on stage together. So While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
That's a great, you can see it on
Prince
YouTube.
Comes out and does the final solo.
Yeah, well, and
it's incredible.
he went longer than he was supposed to, and it was incredible. Wasn't that great? It was for George Harrison's.
Yeah. Watching the expressions on Tom Petty's face and the other guys, they were
realizing,
smiling because they couldn't realize
yes,
how much fun it was and how great it was.
Yeah, I lived in Minnesota for a short time, and we would go see him when he played, and the ego on that guy is unsurpassed, but the musicianship, he played every song, sang every backup.
There's rumors that he would go into New York City and he would show up at places like at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So as people are getting ready to leave and close down, he would show up and they would jam till like the sun came up.
Oh, I think that's true. I've heard that about like the SNL parties, and he did that in Milwaukee. I mean, in Minneapolis, there were several little bars that over near the basketball stadium that he would go to, and that's another guy that taken too soon.
I know. Now, I believe with Prince, there was like a mistaken drug overdose or mistake, like he took more than he was supposed to, or he died of a drug-induced.
Something like that.
What was Tom Petty's cause? Was Tom Petty's death more like health-related, or was it also
I thought
drugs?
it was health-related.
That's what I thought, too.
Yeah, and there's actually, there's a guy that used to be on LA Law, and he does this TV show on CNN, like What Really Happened, and the last days of Tom Petty was what really happened, and it was all medical.
all rockers, go through a phase where there's drugs and alcohol, and then a lot of them come out of it. So like a great example would be like, I remember when Aerosmith finally got clean and sober,
right,
and then their career took off, and I think he had a relapse or two.
Again, because of MTV. Their career took off again with the Walk This Way.
Gene Simmons talks a lot about how he never drank or smoked or did drugs.
Right.
But yet he watched Ace Frehley just go through that whole thing,
Right.
And Ace Frehley spiraled out of control, and that's ultimately why he was kicked out of the band. But in today's world, you're too old to be doing that stuff because your health is number one.
Right.
And number two is the fan. You got to respect the fans. You're not going to show up sloppy drunk on stage when the fans are paying $500 a ticket.
Absolutely. Well, and they used to, and they didn't care. $500 to us now compared to $100 20 years ago, same thing.
I watch the old videos of like Eric Clapton and Cream. I watch Stone's old videos, Who, Zeppelin. And, back then, like it wasn't uncommon for Keith Richards to be smoking a cigarette, playing, and on the top of his amplifier would be a bottle of Jack and a bottle of beer. Like they were partying with the crowd, man. Yeah. Like they were partying and playing, and that's what they did back then.
Yeah. I remember going to one of my many Night Ranger concerts, and Blades was so drunk that he forgot words, and Kelly had to jump in and start singing.
Sure.
And it does disappoint you, and of course now they're all clean too, which is fantastic. But it's one of those things. You just mentioned something that made me think. What about your take on Pink Floyd? That's another one. I did see them, but after Waters was gone.
Pink Floyd, I have nothing but love and respect for Pink Floyd. Another band that I wasn't heavily into as a kid, but I had friends that were so into Pink Floyd.
Yes.
And for some reason, these were the kids that smoked a lot of pot.
100%.
So there was a correlation between smoking lots of dope and listening to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes.
And The Wall and all those albums that were trippy,
Yes.
because when I think they recorded them designed for potheads.
Yeah, my boyfriend
Because
in college and all my girlfriends, they would go smoke pot.
us and them.
And and I would be sitting there in my sweatshirt with my sorority on it, and was not into it at all, but I loved the music. But I was like kind of a purebred.
I was not a big pot. I smoked pot when I was younger, but I wasn't a pothead because I was an athlete. So I couldn't really go that route, even if I wanted to. So I respected the music, and I knew that these guys were getting high all the time. But it just it wasn't doing it for me.
Right.
I never saw Pink Floyd live, but
They played at the Ohio State Stadium. It was the only concert ever to be there, and they had.
Was it the Wall? Because sometimes don't they reenact the Wall show?
They do, but no. This was this had animals. This had Momentary Lapse of Reason. This had everything in it. It was very good. Yeah, but I just wondered how you felt about it, because I was not into drugs at all either. But I love the music.
If Pink Floyd, I'll listen to it in the car, but I'm not going to go search. Hey Siri, play Pink Floyd.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's earlier bands I want to talk about, because these bands for me set the table. The Beach Boys were very easy to listen to as a kid. Surfing USA.
The harmonies.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, I just posted on Facebook when Wilson passed away, and I was like, gone too soon. The harmonies that will never. He
was a Beethoven of our generation.
Oh my Lord! Yeah, when you
Brilliant.
think about that, is it Pet
Sounds?
Yeah, Pet Sounds. That album is insane, and I'm
one of my favorite albums.
I'm a harmonizer. I'm an alto, so I come in and I follow the melody around,
cool.
and I move it around, and any song out there I can find
I
the
love
harmony
that.
to, and he finds things that I've never found before that are so fun to sing.
Yeah, they were so good. They were trained at a very young age, and to harmonize like that, it's amazing.
God only knows. It's like
God
a religious
only knows
experience.
what I'll be without
Absolutely, and you hear all the little things come in. You're like,
How about Sloop John B? That's a fun song.
Oh, that is a great song.
Talk about harmonies
Yeah.
on that. There's videos of kids recreating it.
Oh, are there?
It takes like 12 people to recreate
it?
what the 5 of them did, because they were that good.
There's I don't even know the name of the song anymore. I'd have to go look it up. But there was a Christmas album put out for the Juvenile Diabetes Fund, and Mike Love arranged this song, The Closing of the Year, which was in the Toys movie with Robin Williams. And they come together and sing the closing of the year with all these different voices and instruments, and the Bee Gees, another great band though, the Beach Boys put it all together, and I play it every Christmas, and again, the goosebumps
Well,
go
what's
crazy.
funny you say that, because there is no shortage of great rock and roll Christmas songs. During Christmas season, those 2 weeks, I have a lot of fun finding all these rock songs. Like all my favorite rock stars at one point did a Christmas album.
That's right.
One of my favorites is Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Well, and Merry Christmas, Baby, with Sheryl Crow. Doesn't Bruce sing on that one as
Merry
well?
Christmas,
Merry
baby.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, there's no shortage
So
of this.
good.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
So now, so the Beach Boys took me to the Beatles.
Yeah.
Early Beatles, man. Unbelievable songwriting. Remember they had a greatest hits album that was in red, double, and they had one that was in blue. And one was like 68 to 60 to 70. The other one was like 71 to 73. So there were double albums, because that's when we had vinyl. Remember,
Yes.
we all had vinyl.
Well, not to totally date myself, but I also remember when they finally let those 2 albums come out on iTunes, and it was like $99 to get the whole set, and you had to buy it that weekend. And I remember like waking up at nighttime, and I'm like, at the time I was probably 40 years old, and I'm like, okay, I've got to wake up at midnight and I've got to buy the Beatles' greatest hits on my iTunes.
The Beatles were slow to get to iTunes, weren't they?
They're real slow.
Yeah. And there's even some guys that aren't on there at all. Like Garth Brooks is still not on there.
Oh yeah, and that's another one. I moved to Kansas for a job, and I went to a charity event, and I remember hearing I've got friends in low places, and I thought, who is this? And then the harmonies kicked in, and I was like, okay, you know what? And now he's one of my favorites live. Again, I can throw those harmonies in there.
There's not one but 2 Netflix documentaries on Garth Brooks.
Well, isn't
because there's one where he stepped away from being the greatest country singer of all time.
Yeah.
And he stepped away for many, many, many years to raise a family.
Right.
And then he comes back and he becomes even bigger than he was the first time.
Right.
I mean, it's insanity.
Well, and it's funny. You look at him and you look at Celine Dion and their character, the way and I don't mean their character as an ethics. I mean, they are characters. They have this weird personality where they're overly excited and gracious and flamboyant.
Almost cartoonish.
Absolutely. And I'm like, okay, don't talk, Garth. Don't talk. You're going to ruin it for me. Sort of like a Vegas magician. You know, the way they are overly flamboyant, but just sing.
So what happens is they become corporate. And then they become these icons, right? And then they're controlled by the studios and whatnot. Whereas now the country purists and the old school people, they get sick of it now. They get pissed because now it's like Shania Twain, you know, she at some point she crossed the line and became pop.
Right.
That's because her boyfriend at the time, soon to be husband.
Yeah, soon to be ex.
Right. You know, who did Def Leppard and all, you know, made her a superstar and got her on the radio.
Yeah, much.
So now people are like, well, you know, she no longer is like, and then you can say that about Taylor Swift. You know, Taylor Swift's no longer country because now she's pop.
Well,
there's like old people that like they're diehard, like
it's not Waylon Jennings.
Outlaw country,
exactly.
Old school, right? They don't want any pop in their country, right? None.
It's just funny the over dramatized humility. Sometimes I'm like, look, I don't care if you have an ego, play, but don't come out and tell me, you know, if I were a little bird. I remember not Waylon Jennings, it was Wayne Newton on some old TV show like Dick Van Dyke or Michael Donahue or one of those shows.
The Dick Cavett show.
The Dick Cavett, there you go. And he says, you know, what would you do if you had to start over? And he'd say, well, you know, I'd go out and I'd find a little bird and I'd nurse it back to health and I would do what I had to do. Okay, thank you. Get in, go.
He lost his mind.
Yeah, have your mansions. You don't have to be falsely humble. Just sing. We love you. It's fine.
Well, you look at someone like Elton John. Elton John has his story is clearly out there about how he got heavily into drugs and alcohol and he lost his mind and he became a little bitch, like he sings about, the bitch is back. But then he got cool again, you know, like he became humble.
Right.
And he realized, okay, now I'm towards the later years of my life and I'm off the drugs and alcohol. So now he'll show up and play with Eminem. Right. Or he'll jam with other people, you know.
He shares the spotlight. You know,
like he's cool now. Like he's not a jerk.
Yeah. That Brandy Carlisle, this latest album that came out, it's not even great. I'll be honest with you. I love both of them, but together it didn't make the magic I'd hoped it would make. But he does share a lot, and I like that. I think it's pretty incredible, and I just he's somebody who's grown with the ages, and he went through a lot. You know, you think about the changes in the drugs and alcohol, the changes in the world about his sexuality, and you know, this is a guy that had everything stacked against him. He wasn't gorgeous, but his talent just came through.
He's a sir now, right? He's been knighted, but I think he's probably one of the biggest rock icons on the planet. Like when Elton John dies one day, and hopefully it won't be anytime soon.
Yeah.
That's going to be a very sad day because he is so loved and so popular, and his catalog is so vast.
Well,
right?
And I'm sure you saw the Elton John Billy Joel concert like that.
I never saw that.
Oh, it was like, again, it's these. I keep saying I've had all these pinnacles. You know, I thought seeing Paul McCartney was a pinnacle, but that was a pinnacle. Of my concert going career, watching
Stop right
the two
there.
of them.
Give me your top 3 or 5 concerts of all time.
Paul McCartney. Hell Freezes Over with the Eagles, the last concert with everybody from Fleetwood Mac. It was incredible. The original lineup. They're singing Sarah, and she walks over and rubs her hand on the back of Lindsey Buckingham, and I cried because I'm crazy like that. Let's see, that's 4, right? I got to tell you, this is so funny, but in the 80s, seeing Night Ranger and Quiet Riot for the first time, the headspace I was in as a 19-year-old girl, and seeing Quiet Riot and the opener was Night Ranger, that was a crazy good concert. It's like I found my concert, I busted my concert rock and roll virginity right then. That was like crazy good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's the top of the top, but it's in there.
Were you the kind of fan that would have a beer? You have a beer or drink in your hand when you're at the shows?
Not very often. I'm just kind of a poly purebred, but I mean, I'll drink 2 beers here and there, but I'm not a big drinker.
We used to pregame. We would pregame in the parking lot.
No.
So we walk into the arena or the stadium blitzed.
Kurt, you know me. You've seen me. I'm hyper like this all the time. Can you imagine this on, too much alcohol? It's. I think I'm really funny for about 20 minutes and then I fall asleep. So I'm not going to miss a concert for that. I do like that little 2 beers relaxation feeling. And I just let the music, it's going to sound so trite and corny, but the music is my drug. I mean,
I know that.
I just get into it.
I totally understand that. Music is therapy, man.
Yeah.
Whether you're happy, sad, depressed, elated, whatever it is, I'm in my truck and I'm putting on music and it totally, it goes to the mood I'm in.
Yeah.
I'll listen to church music sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I listen to smooth jazz, sometimes classical piano.
Yeah.
I'm going to a gig, a jacked up show, I listen to classical piano because it chills me and it gets me.
It takes you calm.
Yeah, it calms me down.
So what did you have to listen to before you played with the Moody Blues? That had to, or Blue Oyster Cult, that had to.
So when we put a set together for Blue Oyster Cult, we said, all right, let's just do what we do best. Let's not try to pretend we're something we're not. We got hired for a reason because
Right.
we are who we are. We're a good local little cover band. So we went out and we were obviously very, very nervous. And what happened was we got there as we were told to be there to do our sound check, but Blue Oyster Cult, their flight was delayed. So their gear showed up and their crew showed up and everything was ready for them, but they came in late to do their sound check. And we certainly couldn't do ours until they did theirs, right?
Right.
So they did theirs, and so now it's getting closer to showtime. So now the gates are opening, so now people are coming in. We were supposed to have done sound check and gotten out of there
Right.
before the people. So now we're in front of all these people that are camping out, and we're going testing,
Testing,
1,
testing,
2,
1,
check,
2.
check, 1, 2, check, check.
Give me a chord.
And now we're running around because now I'm starting to sweat now because I'm like, oh my God, my monitor's not right. And then they fix it. Then Larry's stuff's not plugged in, and I'm like, oh my God. Now because I'm that guy in the band, like I'm the guy that worries about shit, right?
Right.
Because that's my band. So now I'm like, fuck. So it wasn't going the way it was supposed to. Now this chick, I forgot her name, from iHeart, does all like the announcements.
Oh, yeah.
She was there and she's like going to me, hey, when should I talk? When should I talk? Because she was going to use my mic because I'm in the center of the stage. And I'm like, just, we'll tell you when we're ready. So now the stage guy who's like this Nazi, he's like, come on, you got 5 seconds. Because, the show must go on, right? And we're just the opening act. So like, we're supposed to be like that guy, right?
Right.
But we don't want to be that guy. We have family, we have friends,
Right.
we have our fans.
Right.
So we want to put on the best show. So, finally, they give us the green light, so I step aside, everything's good to go, and she comes up, makes the announcements, and we play. So we do our 90-minute set or whatever it came out to, like 78, 83 minutes or something like that. And the guy comes on, he goes, all right, time to go, finish up, because the Blue Oyster Cult's like standing there. So we finish our set, and we get a thunderous applause, and we played all of our best stuff, and we sounded the best we ever did.
Oh, that's
It wasn't so much because of our talent, but we were using their gear, and their gear was state of the art.
Oh.
Everything was perfect. Like I hit a bass note, it was like, like I would sing a note, and it was like I was like, oh my God, I sound like a rock. I'm like, I sound so good.
Right.
But because it's like a multi-million-dollar sound system.
Exactly.
So we come off, we're going down the stairs. People are high-fiving us, handing us beers and towels, and Eric Bloom, like, because he was on my show before that.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I had him on this show. In fact, he did a call-in. So I'm sitting here, and that chair was empty, and I'm like, so Eric, how you doing? And he's up on, long
I'm
distance.
sitting on the chair right now. I may never wash my butt again. I'm just saying.
So I interviewed him, and he goes, we're coming to Sarasota. I'm like, he was all excited. So I had something in common with him. So when I saw him, I'm like, hey, I'm K Rock. I'm the guy you spoke to. He goes, yeah, great job, man, So that was cool. So we had a little fun with them.
Good.
And then a lot of people don't realize it, but there's always going to be a trailer in the back of the stage. That's private. It's air conditioned with bathrooms. So that's where the main band goes. They kind of put us off in a tent. Still very nice, where they bring in portable air conditioners.
Right.
Because even February, it's still Florida.
Oh, yeah.
And they had buckets of ice cold beverages, and they had little sandwiches put out. I mean, they did it right. So even us, a local Sarasota cover band, got to experience that.
You got to feel it.
And we had our backstage passes. So like cops were telling people to get out, but yet they were letting us come in. So that was cool. We got the park.
So is that
VIP.
probably your best time on stage you've ever had? Is that where everything hit?
To put it this way, that I'm going to look back on that now as probably one of the greatest things that ever happened to Jacked Up. Because we, for 78 or 83 minutes, we got to be rock stars, man.
Exactly.
So when we started, there were 50 people that were sitting down as they were coming. When we were done, there were several thousand because they were there for Blue Oyster Cult.
Right.
But several thousand people got to see the last few songs of Jacked Up.
Right. I love that.
Oh, man. I was in Publix The couple days afterwards, people coming up to me, man, you guys were great. Oh my God. One lady wanted to kiss me, right? I swear to God.
And you took it.
Oh, yeah. But it's always like 75-year-old ladies. It's kind of weird.
Of course, yeah.
And then I get people want my picture, and I'm just, who am I? I'm just, So it was cool. It was but I was also very humbling because I've said to myself, you know what? I'm smart enough to realize that we were lucky. It was all timing. It may never happen again.
Right.
But
you had it.
Just enjoy it.
You had that moment. Absolutely. You have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
I love it for you.
Well, thank you. So in this part of the show now, we're going to talk more about what's going on currently.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about, who you're currently working with and some of the charities and some of the great things you guys are doing.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Well, I work for Bert's Motor Company, which owns the Black Widow Harley-Davidson, Barracuda Harley-Davidson in Port Charlotte and in St. Pete, respectively. And then we have a newer dealership, which is the Black Pearl, which is Indian Triumph down in Fort Myers. And
So a little history about Bert first. So there's 3 dealerships.
Well, now, guess what? Drum roll, please. There's going to be 4. We're now starting a new Indian dealership called Buccaneer in Tampa. So
Great name.
Buccaneer. You gotta love it.
Indian. I don't know much about motorcycles, but those Indian things are beautiful.
Oh, they are beautiful.
I mean they look gorgeous.
They've got a very strong, passionate group. It's a smaller group than the Hogs and the people that love Harleys, and then you've got the Triumph people that just love that classic look. They think about Steve McQueen and the Great Escape jumping over the fence, and they want that bike. So we've got really something for everybody. But it started with Bert King. And Bert King is a guy that, absolutely no silver spoon, raised himself up by his own bootstraps. He tells a great story about trading a bag of, shall we say, something that one could smoke, like oregano, trading a bag of oregano for an old beat-up Volkswagen. And he decided, I'm changing my life and I'm going to go to work. He went to work in the car business and he did very well. And he said to his wife, look, if I ever make $1 million, I'm going to retire and I'm going to buy a Harley store. That's my dream. And that's what he did. And so this
was the Port Charlotte the first one he bought?
Port Charlotte's the first one he bought, and it was a very ailing store. It was lucky to sell many bikes, and he noticed it because they sold so many T-shirts. They had like the second highest T-shirt sales in the country in Little Port Charlotte, Florida. And he said, I want to go see what makes those people tick. And in the first month that he owned that store, it was just him and then Gil, who is a transplant from the old Harley stores that we had down in Fort Myers. And they sold 100 bikes in 1 month. And they were on their way. And very soon after the success started, he said, you know what? Nothing's more important to me than people that have served others. So he started a charity called Bert Salute to America Foundation. And it serves all first responders and all active military and veterans. And they got their final charter and had everything approved 8 days before Ian. So then he added hurricane victims and survivors to that, mission. And so I'm lucky enough that I get to run the administration part of that charity. So it is meeting with people that have served our country. And if I can be so bold to tell you a quick story, I'm walking through the Barracuda store in St. Pete, and a guy walks up and he has a T-shirt that says Win Sports for Warriors on it. And I said, oh my gosh, are you with Win Sports for Warriors? We help fund Win Sports for Warriors. And he turned around and he said, no, I'm a veteran who does it. He said, do you have a minute? And I said, sure. And he told me this story about how he had PTSD from being in Afghanistan. And he goes out and they teach him how to windsurf and how quiet the ocean is. You just hear the wind. You're away from the surf. You're away from the cars. You hear the wind and it calms you down and it brings him to not fear. It brings him to a place of calm. And he says, and the night before, if I'm in bed and I'm having terrors, I think about what it'll be like the next day to be out there.
That's a great story.
On the ocean. So that's the kind of stuff, very small local charities that we can give money to. We do a lot of grassroots events, and all the tips for the free beer at all of our stores goes to the Bert Salute to America Foundation, and we are truly working to help people's lives. And in a small way, but in a very positive way. So I'm honored to do it. And music's a big part of that. At our stores, we have bands all the time, Friday nights, Saturdays, Sundays. You've been out there. We love it when you guys come out to Jacked Up. We play all the time. And, people get excited about the festival environment.
You know what's funny? It's like there couldn't be a better place for people to buy motorcycles, to ride motorcycles. I mean, think about it. Southwest Florida, a lot of folks are retired. A lot of people have disposable income. You know, they can afford a motorcycle. Maybe it's their second one.
Right.
Right. Everybody that I know rides, man. Like, especially when I play the Twisted Fork, we're there like every other month.
Right.
I see so many motorcycles, and I see so many of my friends in these motorcycle clubs, and they just love it to death. And the roads out here must be great I must be like a great part of the country to be an enthusiast, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's the riding weather. You know, you can ride all the time. You don't have 6 months of snow. You do have a couple months of rain, but it's the weather. And when you think about all those clubs, it's not like what you see on TV. Most of those clubs are made up of first responders. You know, you name the top 7 clubs, and they're motorcycle people from the police force, from firemen, they're military, and these are really good people. And even if they don't have a lot of disposable income, they're going to buy a bike because it's sort of screw the man, I'm going to ride and be happy. And those folks are the most philanthropic folks I've ever met. People always wonder how this
big-hearted people.
Yeah, I'm a little preppy girl from Michigan. How did I end up, in the Harley world? And it's because these folks won't pay their rent. They'll pay their bike bill, and they will pay anything to help children, veterans, or animals.
Big-hearted people, there's no doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt. I've seen it with
I
my
think
own eyes.
that's what it is here, is that we're also like the trike capital, because there's so many people that don't want to give up riding yet, and they can't go on 2 wheels anymore. So we sell the hell out of trikes. You wouldn't believe it. And they can still feel the wind in their hair and the bugs in their teeth, and it's how they want to be spending their free time.
So let's talk about social media. How can people find out about the charity? How do they find out about the stores?
Great.
How can they see the store hours? All that great stuff.
We're very lucky. We have a social media influencer by the name of Uncle Daddy. So if you do Google search Uncle Daddy on Bert's, you'll find our TikTok channel. You'll find our YouTube channel. We're all over Facebook. And he is one of the funniest guys and like an encyclopedia of knowledge of motorcycles. He's a former police officer.
Where does he live?
He lives right in Port Charlotte. He
I should
goes
get
to
him on
all
the
of our
show.
stores. You should. Uncle Daddy be great. There'll be a lot of swearing, a lot of beeping. He's crazy. But look up Uncle Daddy. Look up Bert's Motor Company, Bert's Barracuda, Bert's Black Widow, Bert's Black Pearl, and
now soon to becoming Bert's
Buccaneer Indian, Bert's Buccaneer Indian up on Adamo Road. So that's how you find us. And we've got the Twisted Fork, which is like the best restaurant in Port Charlotte. It's amazing.
That's one of the greatest things to happen to people because it's a meeting place. It's not just for rock and rollers to hang out and eat and drink and play, but motorcycle enthusiasts can go there.
Well,
you get your bike service and you can have lunch.
Absolutely. And the great thing for you is that the owner, Bert Parsley, he's in one of my favorite local bands. I mean, obviously I love Jacked Up, I love Stereo Riot, but I love Carnival.
I saw them.
Carnival Soul.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
They're incredible. And, he's the drummer. His brother is the trumpet
They were
player.
both on my show, by the way.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they understand what it takes to have good music and what it takes to have a good venue. And it's just a party
They're musicians
all the time.
that put together a venue designed for musicians.
Yeah, so I've got the two Berts.
The stage, the sound, the lighting, it's perfect.
Yeah, Bert Parsley and Bert King dedicated to just making it a kick-ass experience.
It's a great partnership. There's
Absolutely.
no doubt. Now, I haven't been to the one yet up the OCC. I haven't been there yet.
OCC, so another great partnership. Obviously, Paul Sr. and that group, and then Keith Overton used to be the GM of Tradewinds. So that is somebody who understands Floridians that want to have a great experience. So their food is amazing. I personally go for their steak sandwich, which is the Street Glide, which is amazing. But another huge 4,000 person amphitheater.
I'm going to go up there.
Bands.
Yeah, I'm going to go. In fact, next time you're up there, let me know. I'll meet you there. We'll have some lunch.
I'm there every Wednesday. I'll take you to lunch.
Okay,
All
I'll
right.
come up on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
because I hear good things about it, and I want my band to play there one time.
Yeah, well, and we'll get you in touch with Victor, who does all the bands there.
Victor's a good guy. Okay, so in our final minutes, let's just does anybody you want to shout out to? You want to say thanks to anybody? Anybody you want to say hello to?
Well, I'll say this. We're coming up on Bert King's birthday, and Bert is one who is so humble. He does not like it at all when he gets kudos, but I'm going to give a shout out to Bert King because we couldn't do what we do in the fun way we do it. The thing that makes you so good at music, Kurt, is that you love it. You live it.
Passion.
The thing that makes us so good at what we do at work is because we love it and we live it. And Bert says, look, Perry, I don't care how quirky you are. I don't care what a goofball you are. You want to try something, go out and make it happen. So shout out to him. And shout out to Uncle Daddy and Gunner. Gunner is his wrangler and cameraman. They're hysterical. And just shout out to all the amazing groups that have donated for our charity. The Defenders, the Leathernecks, the Blue Knights, the Enforcers, the Punishers. These are the Llamas. These are amazing people. This is not a group. They're not one of those outlaw groups that you have to be afraid of. These are good-hearted people. So come on out and have fun with us.
So somebody who's watching this show right now that has a checkbook in hand and they want to send a check to the charity, what do? Who do they write it out to, and where do they send it to?
So you can go to Perry at Bert'sHD for HarleyDavidson.com. You can get in touch with me. You can also go to Bert'sLootToAmericaFoundation.org. And we'll take that check and we'll put it to good use. Local, and no expenses come out of it. I'm paid through the dealerships. So you know that 100% of your donor dollar is going to go right to where it can do the best good.
So every dollar is important, right?
Absolutely.
And the goal is to get as much revenue in as possible to help all these people you're helping.
Absolutely. I mean, after Milton hit, I loaded up my car with water and fans and personal products and hygiene products and food and, drove out through Punta Gorda and just made sure people had what they needed. You'd be amazed what we can do with a very little amount of money. The impact you can have on people is crazy.
The one thing I've learned about being a local musician here and now with this podcast is that there's a lot of very generous people that are always waiting to help out. They just need to know a little, like, where to go. Like, how do you do it? Like, is there a QR code? What's the PayPal address, or is there a Venmo?
Exactly.
You know?
Well, and I think there's been a lot of charitable fatigue. With being hit with 2 major hurricanes in such a short period of time has devastated a lot of people. And so we want to give back as much as we collect in and more. So if you can't give today, that's fine. If you need today, call me too.
And also, we're going to have lunch, you and I, on Wednesday. But I do want to go down to Port Charlotte, and I want you to introduce me to Bert King. Because maybe he would be a good guest to come on the show.
Bert would be an amazing guest. The stories he has, the mentors that he's worked with in the past, Red McComb, and some great stories. He is a Texan who wears a fishing hat and shorts, and he's one of the coolest people you'll ever have. I guarantee you that.
Very good. All right, Perry. Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you for coming in.
Shout out to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I enjoy doing this show, and I've been trying to get you on for a while.
Well,
I'm glad you're finally here.
Well, we've known each other now for, 15 years, I think.
We have a great story, you and I.
Yeah.
From Fort Myers.
That's right.
And then you left the market, and you came back. And
and
we saw each other again.
I came back.
Yeah.
I remember you were at my goodbye party at my house.
That's right. And the food was delicious.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I'll always judge a party. I'll remember a party by the food, right? Isn't that funny? That was good.
I'm never going to cater a party. I will cook all day if I have to, and then my husband makes the best pink champagne cupcakes.
Yes, and I met your husband. He's a great guy.
Pink champagne cupcakes are his specialty.
What's unique is you get to work with your husband too, and
I do.
That's a good thing.
He's the manager over all the facilities of the stores, and I'm the engagement and marketing officer.
Oh, I have one request for him. Tell him to put a tent on Bert's Black Pearl stage.
We don't have a tent. We have a awning.
Put some kind of covering on there because that sun is brutal.
We have a cover now. So yeah, he built the stage out of Black Pearl.
He did a good job building the stage. But I'm just saying, we played there with we were one of the first bands.
I know it.
And we were sitting there
we
melting.
Were dying. Yeah, there is a cover now. I promise.
All right, Perry.
All right. Thanks so much, my love.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.